The Targeted Support to CDEMA Project, funded by Global Affairs Canada, was launched in 2019 to help CDEMA achieve its mandate as it relates to strengthening the comprehensive disaster management framework. What prompted the start of the project, and what gaps did Canada seek to fill as it relates to building resilience?
Yeah, well, 2017 was a real landmark year, I think, for the region. With the devastation of Irma and Maria, we saw that CDEMA really needed some additional help. We've been funding the region on disaster management for a long time, but that really brought home that more work was needed. Obviously, climate change is making things even worse. And so we really recognized that we needed to re-engage and provide some more support. We worked with UNICEF in the UK on a review of the response, and some of the areas that came forward as needing that attention was emergency telecommunications, logistics, and some information elements as well. So that's how we sort of designed this project as a way to fill some of those gaps.
Women and girls have been a key beneficiary of the project through the Caribbean Early Recovery Fund and other strategic interventions to incorporate gender responsiveness into disaster risk reduction. Why was this key for Canada to support?
So Canada's Feminist International Assistance Policy requires that all of our development projects consider the different needs of different groups. So that might be men, women, boys, girls, and then all their varieties in terms of where they live, rural, urban, poor, etc. So we sort of have to consider all of those pieces in making sure that we deliver projects that meet the needs of the most vulnerable. And so we made sure that under this project, we brought the gender expertise to the coordinating unit. And through the gender specialists, they've been able to further sensitize and train the staff of the coordinating unit. But also in particular through the Early Recovery Fund, we've been able to deliver some projects that specifically target women farmer cooperatives, created safe spaces in St. Vincent, and sort of really helped, establish that sort of level of resilience for those most vulnerable groups.
Knowledge management and decision-making go hand in hand, especially in this sphere to strengthen disaster risk reduction. How did the project achieve this outcome through the Caribbean Risk Information System and the online CDM audit tool?
So we can't deliver effective international assistance if we don't fully understand the context within which we're working. So strengthening the Caribbean Risk Information System is an important part of that, sort of bringing together as much information as we have as possible to make sure that the countries and all the different partners of the CDEMA system can really develop those solutions that make sense. And also in terms of a response, making sure that we fully understand the status of the communities before we try and go in with the stuff that they need. But in addition, putting the audit tool online, it's anticipated that using an online platform will make it a lot more effective and efficient in administering the tool. And through the results of the tool, the national architecture will be able to identify what those gaps are and where they need the support, and the coordinating unit will be able to design programs that meet those needs. So a key element of that has been delivering training for national disaster offices, but also some people from other departments in all the countries, so that they can really utilize the geo-CRIS element of the CRIS. So the geomatic sort of information that's been gathered and put together in a tool that is available to all of the national disaster offices. And so we've been doing a lot of workshops and training around that.
So given that the region's operational readiness to multi-island strikes prompted the launch of the project, do you think that the interventions made to support the regional response mechanism have made the intended impact?
Yes, absolutely. I think, we've had a big focus on strengthening the regional response mechanism through this project. And one of the key ones, one of the big ticket items is the emergency telecommunications equipment. So we've seen multiple incidents and events where the entire communications network is down, and that makes coordination of a response much, much harder, right? If you can't get the information between the teams and back to bases as to sort of what the urgent needs are. So now we've got equipment that the teams can deploy with, and they can set themselves up straight away and be able to communicate, send images back to the coordinating unit, to the national architecture, to really sort of make everything much more efficient and effective. So we're really happy about that. It's a very exciting development. The other piece that I wanted to highlight is the regional logistics hub. So that's not something that was planned under the project, but we had COVID-19 during the life of the initiative, and the Caribbean was really struggling to get market product in. All the personal protective equipment and everything for small states was proving to be almost impossible. So by setting up this temporary logistics hub alongside the government of Barbados and the World Food Programme, with other support from CDB as well, we were able to establish a temporary logistics hub so the bulk supplies could come into Barbados, be repackaged, and then distributed to all the small islands in the region. And what's really exciting about that is that has led to a more permanent fixture. So we're continuing to work with World Food Programme to establish a permanent logistics hub, which will be a game changer, I think.
Recovery is a critical phase of the disaster management cycle, especially early recovery as islands look to rebuild. Tell me about the Caribbean Early Recovery Fund and its legacy in the region.
Sure. So Canada used to manage a similar sort of fund directly from the High Commission, and we saw how much impact just a small amount of money can have on the communities as they transition from sort of immediate concerns like water and shelter into restoring their lives to some sense of normality. And we've also seen repeatedly where the humanitarian assistance actors will come into the field quite quickly and provide all of those basic needs. And then it takes a long time for the larger support of the recovery money to sort of really get going. And so there's this gap of funding and support. So that's where the Early Recovery Fund came from, is really identifying where can we help people who have been impacted get back to some sense of normal life. And so the Early Recovery Fund has sort of been able to do that with some of the countries in the region that have been impacted during the life of the project. So we've worked in Antigua in terms of an area that gets flooded consistently. And so we've been able to deal with some of the drainage there and some of the access. We've worked in St. Vincent post-volcano with a lot of different projects. So there's been some work around safe spaces for women. And we've worked on restoring some of the schools that were impacted. Also worked with some farmers in terms of providing water and restoring their water supply. And then even most recently with Beryl, we've been able to provide some support so that the children that have been displaced from the affected islands of Union and all the others back onto the mainland, helped the Ministry of Education with some support to provide those temporary schools for those children. So it's really been, hugely beneficial. St. Lucia, we also helped some of the families that were impacted from the flooding and provided some appliances, things like stoves and washing machines, again, just to sort of help people get back on their feet. And then finally in Belize, we've provided some support for the cocoa farmers who lost so much from the fires just this year. And we hope to be able to help them get back on their feet, as well as some work around restoring livelihoods for a market that had been flooded and also a community that struggles with their water supply. We've been able to install some solar panels so that they can have the pumps working when there's no power. So it's really been really important for those communities. And we really hope that going forward, that concept of a small amount of funds making a big difference can be picked up and carried forward.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for your time, and to the Global Affairs Canada team for your continued support to the region.
You're welcome. Thank you.